On October 21st, IBJ unveils the 2025 Women of Influence. Join us to celebrate Indy's most inspiring leaders and hear the powerful stories behind their success. Don't miss this moment. Register now at ibj.com/influence2025.
I promise you, it's not much, but his isn't much. Now, if he gets a chicken wing on him,
I've seen what education has done for people and the opportunities it presents. I just don't like anything that diminishes that. It doesn't mean I don't embrace name, image, and likeness, because I do. I just like to see a balance where those guys can get paid, what they're worth, they get their education, and they also have a great experience.
And now, without further ado, we get right to this week's conversation with Purdue men's basketball head coach Matt Painter, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by the head coach, the head basketball coach at Purdue University, Matt Painter. Coach, thanks for taking the time to join me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a busy time for you. Is there a downtime for you for a basketball coach at a major Division I program?
Yeah, if you can get your recruiting done in the spring, you have some time there. We have a dead period for about 10 days in late May. And then there's also a dead period from roughly early August. I think it's like August 4th for about 2 weeks right then. So those are kind of the sweet spots if you want to go on vacation or have some downtime. But for the most part, if you don't get things done in the spring and it leaks into the summer, it all just kind of runs together until that time in August. And then if you go on an international trip at that time, which you can now once every 4 years. So yeah, there's no downtime. If you don't get your spring recruiting done and you got an international trip, you don't have any time. But if you can get that, completed in the spring, you have a little bit. And then obviously you have some there in August.
Yeah. In fact, as we're speaking right now, you're on a recruiting trip. You're in Florida, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's, it opens the Wednesday after Labor Day, and then you can recruit all year at your days. But once official practice starts, a little bit harder to get out and about. So you have some days here. We normally work out at this time or practice at this time. We only get 4 hours a week until our first official day on September 24th. And so we'll recruit, or I'll recruit. It just depends. Monday through Thursday, then you come back, you have a practice on Friday or Saturday, have a practice on Sunday, and then go back out. So that's kind of the way it is for about 3 weeks. Then as official practice starts, you go out about once a week until you get, everybody signed there in the fall. And then you just kind of have, about 4 weeks where you don't have anything to, going on because seasons haven't started. They're practicing also. And so you don't go out then. And then during the year, it's just your call. The portal has stopped a lot of recruiting during the year. We don't get in the portal as much as others. You go out about once a week, once every 2 weeks, depending on your schedule.
Yeah. Talk about how the recruiting process has changed, because obviously it has in a big way. You mentioned the portal and NIL and all those kinds of things. How have you adapted, or how have you changed your process?
Yeah, us and about a handful of others, not a lot, have really not changed much. Obviously, it's more transactional with name, image, and likeness, but education is still a big piece of it. And so still trying to get that balance and that fit at Purdue. We've taken 4 guys out of the portal in 5 years. It's one of the fewest of any high major in the country. And so our deal has always been education. It's always been development and, piecing a team together. And sometimes, you can look at us and we have a really good team at times. And maybe you say it's not the most talented team, but we're not striving for that. We're striving for the most productive team and the team that plays well together. And so just we've always been able to get size. And the last 10 years, we have the best 3-point field goal percentage in the country for a high major. We're third nationally, but for a high major, we're first. And to go along with our size, then obviously, we've had a really good point guard here for the past 3 years in Braden Smith. Fletcher Lawyer's probably the best shooter in the country. Trey Kaufman-Wren had the most field goals in the country last year. So, yeah, just trying to to grow, develop, get better, but also keep things in perspective. And I just don't like anything. I've seen what education has done for people and the opportunities it presents. I just don't like anything that diminishes that. It doesn't mean I don't embrace name, image, and likeness, because I do. I just like to see a balance where those guys can get paid, what they're worth. They get their education, and they also have a great experience from a basketball standpoint that helps them grow and hopefully become professionals.
And I think it's been amazing to me, and others have commented on the players you get, but the players you keep. You haven't really lost that many players in this age of people transferring willy-nilly. What do you think is responsible for that?
Yeah, well, we've lost players. We haven't lost guys that have played all the time and started. I think anytime guys can get through a couple years and they don't quite get what they want, they're going to look to leave. We normally replenish with high school guys, and but we take almost a guy a year, out of the portal. But I think Purdue's a unique place. We've had 89 straight sellouts. They love their basketball. They understand basketball. But our fans know about playing hard, what that looks like. And so that's what we want to embody. We want to get guys that have a strong passion for the game of basketball, but also have a balance and understand where education can take you in your life and put you in different rooms and get better opportunities. And it doesn't guarantee anything, but you shouldn't leave Purdue and just the only thing you had was an all conference plaque. You should have made contacts and friends and people that you're going to grow with and grow old with, but also, that you're going to do business with. I think those contacts are so important. A lot of them want to stay in the game after they're done playing. So, it's there for them. And that's what we've been able to do across the board, and then be understanding. Like when somebody hasn't achieved or hasn't gotten exactly what they want, you got to want what's best for them, but you got to be honest though. You have to be honest. Like when guys are unhappy on our team, we have a good team. We have a good team. Like there's nothing promised to guys, no matter who they is. Zach Edey's a 2-time National Player of the Year. And his last comment before he committed was, "I just don't want a redshirt." And I said, well, beat somebody out. And I think that's, an important piece when you look at competition. Like, you get in recruiting and, I always call them the last liars. And if you want to listen to the last liar, you're going to get your heart broken, but if you want to go somewhere where they develop guys, they get better, they win, and they're going to be honest and fair with you. There's a lot of coaches out there that are that way, but then there's other guys now I didn't get what I wanted. That's competition. Like, I always say if somebody's promising you something, they're either lying to you or they stink. And so don't take promises, take opportunities. You want to grow and you want to get better, you want to improve. And if you don't go to a good team, how are you going to get challenged every day? A lot of improvement happens in everyday practice. A lot of improvement happens with the people in that locker room. So if we can get people that have a strong passion for the game and they work, because people that are skilled aren't born skilled. People that are athletic are born athletic. There's a little bit of difference right there. Now, if you can find athletic guys that have a passion for the game and that are skilled, that's the perfect mix. That is the perfect mix from a recruiting standpoint when they're makeup matches, what you want in your program. So for us, like that's a big deal, going after those skilled guys, because skilled guys put in a lot of work to get to that point where they're really good at decision making, really good at shooting the basketball. And so that's huge for us, and it's also contagious for us in the right direction.
You put a premium, as you mentioned, on competitiveness. With the roster you have coming back, with the additions you've made, again, you've got a stacked roster. What's been the level? Has that kind of heightened the competitive nature of summer workouts and some of the things you've seen?
Yeah, without question. I think last year we had one good team in practice. And when we balanced things, we didn't have two good teams. Now, with that being said, we were still the 13th best team going into the tournament, and we get to the Sweet 16. And we had success, but when you go to a Final Four and you're a runner-up national champ the year before, it doesn't feel that way. And so, we feel like we got another bite at the apple. Here this year doesn't guarantee anything. You got to get in the tournament first, and you got to win your first game to get to your second and on down the line. So that's something for us, with that competitive spirit in practice. Right now, we have two really good teams in practice. And we feel good about everybody on our roster. Everybody's made strides. They've gotten better, but we want them to collectively get better. And I think that's what's a true team. And I think when you add pieces for us, that's a need. Like, if, you need another ball handling guard, you need another rebounder. You get Daniel Jacobson back from his injury, on down the line. I'm not going to go through every single guy, but that's the point in the spring. Like, so many people are leaving, and now you're trying to, patch up those holes that you have to get back to an elite level, but our core stays. So we're able to do that. A lot of other programs, those guys are trying to patch things up, but they also get main guys leaving. Guys average 30 minutes a game. The guys that average 30 minutes a game for us, all three of those guys, they returned. And so, like, now being able to adjust and do things when your core's intact, and all those guys sacrifice. When we talked about it in our first team meeting, they could have went in the portal and got more money. We're the only school in America that had to return 2 All-Americans and pay 2 All-Americans. And then, Fletcher Lawyer to us is an all-conference level player. He's been one of our leaders, if not our leader. Very vocal, tough, understands the game. And then so, like, we have a great core to go along with Trey Kaufman, Ren, and Braden Smith. But we got some good pieces coming in to help our front line. We got some good pieces in our backcourt. And so, like, we're excited about the season.
You mentioned honesty in recruiting a minute ago, and I think back, I've heard you tell the story about your recruiting process as a student, as a high school player coming out of Delta High School, and that honesty and kind of straight talk from Gene Keady is what convinced an IU guy, right? You and your family were big IU fans, convinced an IU guy to want to go to Purdue.
Yeah, it's choosing, it's a people business. It's choosing people. More than anything. I think a lot of things come into it. And I just met with a kid yesterday, and I talked about it. I said, you've made a handful of visits. I said, the buildings are nice. The practice facilities nice. The arenas are nice. Like, the campus is nice. Like, everything is nice. Your happiness is going to lie in how much you play and how much you win. Mm-hmm. And your happiness at the end is going to lie in, did you develop and get better? And do you have a chance to be a pro? Did you win at a high level in college? And did you develop into a pro? So keep your focus there. Mm-hmm. Keep your focus in development. You'll be amazed at, like, when it comes down to it, guys don't pick the best coach. Guys don't pick the staff that develops. And it blows my mind. Like, we've had ultimate size. We just had a couple big guys, like, knock us off their list. And it just, like, blows my mind. I go, isn't getting better and getting the basketball and developing number one? And how can you argue that we shouldn't be in there? Like, you don't have to come to Purdue, like, but we should be in the mix. Yeah. When it comes to developing players and getting better. But when it gets down to it, decisions are getting made, and they're not in the best interest of young people when it comes to basketball. When you get there and you get with a family, or you get with a group of people that are assisting, because there's a lot of agents out there that are good at it and they understand basketball, and they're like, hey, I got to do what's best for my client now. And then there's some other guys that ignore it, and it's just totally transactional, which it should be a part of the equation, but it shouldn't be the number one thing. Your number one thing should be your happiness. And if the only thing you're searching for is that, then you're ultimately not going to get the big prize. And if finances are your deal, the second contract in the NBA is your thinking. That is your thinking, because the money there, if you can get a second contract in the NBA, is life changing. And that's just really important for us to kind of stay with where we are and trying to search out those guys that development's their deal, and they want to win big, and they want to get better, and they want to be a part of a team. And that's how we've had success. We've had success because we've been able to find those guys. And sometimes when you lose out on some guys and they go to a place that's very similar to you, you got to tip your hat to them, because Purdue's not the only place. There's a lot of good places out there, but there's also some places that it's totally transactional and guys aren't getting better. They got a lot of talent. And, like, that's where kids have to, like, really take a step back and say, it's there for you to have all of it. Like, don't just settle one spot in this equation. Like, it's there for you to have all of it. What I mean by that, it's there for you to be around good people. It's there for you to get an education. It's there for you to grow as a player and develop into a pro. And it's there for you to make money through name, image, and likeness. It's all there for you. Go get it all and have a balance within that. And that's where your ultimate happiness is. Just don't go to the highest bidder, and then you're not as good in those other areas. And then your development's not there, and you don't get to where you want to be. And you're not, that right there doesn't create the environment to improve, doesn't create the environment to get better and understand it. It's just like, well, this didn't work. Let's go get the next guy. I don't like that. Like, if somebody doesn't hit it right away, like Trey Kaufman ran is a great example. Like, he was overwhelmed when he got here. Doesn't mean he's not a good player, but he was overwhelmed. He needed a redshirt. And then Zach Edey was in the fray. So Zach Edey's going to play, obviously. And so it diminished his role to start with, but he knew right as Zach leaves, now he was ready for that. But he's put a lot of work into it. Like, they didn't like that isn't Purdue's magic. That's Trey Kaufman-Wren's magic. He's put a lot of work into it in the offseason, during the season, no different than Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. And those guys have just kept getting better each year, but they're in a great environment. And that's what you have to take. Everybody's path is going to be different, but you got to get yourself into an environment of learning, developing, and then hopefully, ultimate winning.
It's a sales pitch that is working. Certainly Purdue basketball recruiting classes among the tops in the country. In fact, some put it number one in the class of 2026. Coach, as you think back again to that recruiting visit from Purdue, from Gene Keady, and the message that he gave to you then, which you didn't necessarily appreciate at the time, I think I read or heard where your dad said something after that really, kind of turned the tide. It sounds to me like kind of the themes from that visit and that message from Gene Keady maybe echo in some of your thinking today when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah, no question. To be young again, right? Like how we thought and how you process things. And it's more of liking what you're hearing versus making a decision to do what's best for you. And I don't think as a young person, you can do what's best for you and really understand that because you haven't lived long enough. You got to have a good support group. You got to have people that understand that, whether it's a high school coach or an AAU coach or parents, or if you haven't been through the process and you don't quite get it, like that's really hard. And so when it got down to it, like, he said some very direct, honest things about waking up in the morning or getting a job if I didn't go to summer school and, just things, I wanted to hoop, I wanted to play pickup and have a good time. And, people that just want to have a good time normally aren't going to be too successful. And, I was very fortunate, a guy that, raised me and, a mom that raised me. They were diehard Indiana fans, but they were smart enough to understand why Indiana was successful in the discipline that Coach Knight had and the program that he had. Purdue had a lot of the same qualities. And I don't think Purdue had gotten the same guys through the years. And when they did, like with Troy Everett and Todd in the late 80s, and, you saw what they were capable of and you saw the success that they had. And that was a real big influence. Those guys and their success was a real big influence on me deciding, to go to Purdue. But it was also, I think the statement was made that, I definitely need Coach Keady more than he needs me. And he was the only person that came into our living room that 100% like hit me between the eyes with stuff and was straightforward. And that's what I've always tried to, to do, because I've seen how his honesty and his approach have been good for people and gave them a foundation to move on in life, because you're going to hit, speed bumps. You're going to have a lot of adversity. And once you can learn to handle that adversity and use it as a positive and a positive spin to learn things, is no different than anybody saying like, what's the silver lining of your struggle? And whether you're losing a game or you have a season or whatever, in life. And you got to be able to do that. And you got to be able to handle those things appropriately. But if you don't have the right guidance, you don't have the right environment, it's really, really tough to get. So I was fortunate that I did have that. And I made that decision to go to Purdue. And I always say, let Purdue work for you. We have a lot of great people at Purdue. Let it work for you. And I think guys have seen that after they've left our place, that we're not done with them. and your career's over, but we're not done with you, and we're here to help in any capacity we can. But if you're going to sit there and hurt yourself and not put yourself in good positions, you're just making it difficult and then blaming people and things of that nature. I mean, you got to get out of your own way and get over yourself. And once again, when you get into the real world after professional basketball, you got to become part of a team. You were a part of a team. And sometimes those really good players, that's hard for them because they were the best player on a team. They were all conference. They were all American. And now in the real world, when you go into the business or whatever, you become a part of a team, but you start at the bottom. And now you got to work your way up. And that's just the way it is. And Coach Keady used to talk about it as a company man. And that sounded really stupid to me when I was 19. Like, he goes, learn to be a company man, learn to do what's best for the company, come early, stay late, and you'd be surprised how much that helps you.
Coach Keady obviously has been a very important part of your life professionally as well as personally. Certainly when Purdue had that breakthrough to the Final Four, the championship game 2 years ago, of course, very special for you. How special was it to, in a sense, share that with Coach Keady, who was very visible on the sidelines during the season? How special was that run to share it with him?
Yeah, probably the coolest thing that happened was, Zach Edey gave him a piece of the net, unsolicited, just on his own, because he realizes that, what Coach did for me, what Coach did for our program, and he's our foundation. There's no way around that. Like, when you have a good team, can you consistently have a good team? Can you have that excellence? That sustained success. And he was able to have that, and we've been able to have it. But I also think a lot of that goes back to him. We've had a good program for a long time. We've graduated guys. We've played together. We've tried to play the right way. We've tried to get guys that fit. We haven't been perfect. I've made mistakes. We've made mistakes, but we've tried to learn from those mistakes and be humble. There's two things in our sport that you're either humble, you're about ready to get humble. And that's kind of life, right? Your own kids will humble you. I always think when something like that happens, like, I probably deserve this for what I put my parents through growing up. And so, but it's good to just, to be able to have that resource and have that understanding. And not everybody gets that to where when they take over a job where there's already a blueprint in place for your student athletes and for your team.
Yeah. Is there a favorite? Do you have a favorite Gene Keadyism, a favorite saying? He had a few of them out there that you use today.
Try to think. I was talking to him the other day. He comes to practices a lot. So I was talking to him the other day about a couple of drills that I did, and he walked in the door, and I was like, hey, man, those are your drills right there. I've modified them, but they're like, those are yours. And he probably stole them from somebody else. And that's what we do in this business. People all the time are saying, man, I love what you guys run, man. Purdue stuff is so good. And I'm like, well, we stole it all. We packaged it a little differently, but we stole it. Like, it's not, and that's what's great about our sport and our business, about, sharing ideas and stealing things from watching NBA games and other. I've learned a lot from the guys I've competed against. I think that's something that's really smart, from Tom Izzo to Bo Ryan to Thad Matta to Bruce Weber, like on down the line. I know I'm missing a lot of guys there, but I've learned a lot from the competitions and tried to grow from that. And that was something like, I learned from being coach's assistant for that year and then those 4 years. And he's got a lot of sayings, and he's a lot of things. I don't know if it's a lot of things we can talk about on the podcast, but he was great, man. He was great for me. He was great, for college basketball, just, going into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and a lot of people don't realize that when you look at his 25 years and his 27 years as a, Division I guy, head coach, he was a head junior college coach for 9 years, and he was a high school coach for 5 years. So part of going into the Hall of Fame, and what we really were trying to sell to them was, don't look at 27 years. He was Eddie Sutton's assistant for 4 years at Arkansas. They went to a Final Four, I think in 1977, if I got that correctly. But he was the head junior college coach at Hutch Junior College 9 times, went to the national tournament 6 of those years. And then, he was a high school coach for 5 years also. So he was a very successful high school coach. He was a very successful junior college coach. And then, was his 2 years at Western Kentucky was very successful. Clem Haskins took over for them, one of Western Kentucky's former players, after he was done with a great NBA career. And so, like, it wasn't just Purdue. It was Western Kentucky, it was Arkansas, it was Hutch. I think Beloit was the school that he coached in Kansas. He played 4 sports in junior college, played 2 sports at K-State. So just a great person, but just an unbelievable career. So
yeah, very impressive. Hey, we have more with Coach Matt Painter coming up as we wrap up our conversation with him. Talk about the future of college sports and what's next when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
We build Indiana. The Laborers International Union of North America builds and maintains roads, bridges, and other essential infrastructure that make us the crossroads of America. So thanks to LIUNA members' work, Hoosiers have a better quality of life, like access to utilities, easier routes to jobs, schools, or medical care, and deliveries keep moving. We build Indiana for good jobs and stronger communities. The Laborers International Union of North America. We are LIUNA.
Moments of inspiration mixed with time to network, IBJ Media Events has you covered. From industry deep dives to awards celebrating Indiana's top leaders, see what's coming up and reserve your seat at ibj.com/RSVP.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Purdue head basketball coach Matt Painter. A very busy guy this time of year and getting ready for a season with a lot of anticipation. And speaking of that, Coach, as I'm sure it's not lost on you, with the roster coming back, the performance you've had the last few years, the additions you've made, a lot of hype and, again, anticipation about this season. Does that change kind of the vibe around preseason workouts on the recruiting trail? You're getting so much attention.
Yeah.
A number of folks saying, hey, this is going to be the number one team going into the season. Does that change things?
Not really. If we're preseason number one, that'll be the 4th year in the last 5 that we've been number one in the country. So it's, I think that's pretty cool for our program and for nationally for people when they read that this is 4 out of 5 years we've been number one in the country at some point during the season. It just shows that sustainability that you want to have. You want to be very, very successful, but you want to sustain it. You want to be there every year, and that's what we're trying to do. And if you sit around and gloat and get excited about it, that's when they're going to get you. Yeah. And so, like, right now, from a recruiting standpoint, we're concerned about after next year. No different than when Zach Edey left. You walk off that court and get beat by UConn, and it's a hard pill to swallow. But the better team won. They outplayed us, and now you're like, can you get another bite at that apple? And then last year we were very close. We had some tough breaks at the end of that Houston game. That was tough to take. Yeah. Very tough to take. There's a handful of plays there that just did not go our way, and but now here we are. Here we are. We're in a really, really good position. I think it always helps from a recruiting standpoint. Like when you tell kids, we're tied with Duke with the most high major wins in the last 7 years. So it's not, once again, as I spoke earlier, it's like, it's not anybody can have a great season. Anybody can have a couple good seasons, but can you keep having those seasons? And that's what we want to try to do. And it doesn't mean that we'll keep doing it. But that's what we're trying to do. And I think staying grounded as a staff and staying grounded as a program is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and you put a premium, I think, scheduling and scheduling some tough teams. I think this year that you've got Marquette and Auburn, and we've got an exhibition game with Kentucky, I think, as well.
Correct.
Why is that important for you to get those high-level teams in the pre-conference?
Yeah, I mean, like last year, a couple people said, we overscheduled.
Yeah.
But when we played Auburn, it was the first time in probably 5 years we've played somebody where we were just outclassed. And, just right from the jump, you could smell it. And it's just like, oh man, like we had to get better, but it let us know what we had to do if we face somebody of that caliber again. And when we faced Houston in the Sweet 16, I felt Houston was the caliber of Auburn. They were the caliber of Auburn, if not vice versa, because both of them have just had great teams, great coaches, and we were ready. We were ready, but it took us 3 months to get there. It doesn't mean we didn't have struggles and we didn't have losses, because we did, but that scheduling piece of it like really helps you. We went 3 years without losing a non-conference game.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big statement. We won 4 straight exempt tournaments against really sticky competition. So this year, with Alabama, Auburn, Iowa State, Marquette, Memphis, and then either Wake Forest or Texas Tech to throw in Kentucky in an exhibition game. We have Akron and Kent State, who have both been the top, of that league for a long time in the MAC. Last year we played Toledo, which has been very successful in the MAC. So, we're playing quality opponents. We're trying our best to get out there, and especially in the exempt tournaments and some of the neutral sites, because that's the NCAA tournament. You have to be able to win on neutral courts and keep challenging yourself. Even some of those losses can really help you if you handle them the right way.
Coach, as you look at the state of college basketball, we talked a little bit about it with NIL, transfer portal. Where do you see things going? A lot of people talk about things being, a bit chaotic, can't continue this way. There needs to be guardrails. Where do you see things as they stand now and going forward?
Yeah, they're really trying to work to get some consistency, with those guardrails. And one of the issues in our business is whenever you're trying to manage things and get things stable and consistent across the board, there's a lot of people that are trying to dance in the gray area. And we knew that this would lead to with the portal and name, image, and likeness and transferring. The transferring every year makes it really difficult. Guys aren't going into the portal before May 1st. Guys are going into the portal after the 4th game when they haven't gotten their role, and they put it out there, and then the third party people do the work. And so it's just made really difficult, and it's made it impossible to load a mid-major programs. It's been really hard for them, because when they go out and they get somebody who can make an impact on their program and, come in and be an all conference player right away, they're going to lose that player 80-90% of the time. And, that's not fair, to them. They got one, right? And it's like the days I grew up watching Ball State basketball, being from Muncie, Indiana. So, I watched Ron Harper at Miami of Ohio. I watched Dan Marley at Central Michigan. I could go on and on about the different players. I watched Ray McCollum growing up. He was a fabulous player at Ball State. And so these guys wouldn't have stayed. These guys would have been there for a year or two, and then they would have been gone. And so it's, you can't grow and develop if you can't keep them. And so I think the number one thing for us is really worry about ourselves and just keep building and treating people the right way and building that relationship with your players. But it's also, it's no different than raising your own kids. Like, you're not going to do things that they want to do all the time. You're going to do things that's best for them and best for your program. And sometimes that's going to turn people off, and then, if you don't have somebody, if you're a player and you don't have somebody close to you that really gets it and understands basketball, you're probably in a bad spot. And that's terrible, because you get a lot of people out there that love their kids or, love that individual that they're there. But if you don't have a real good pulse on development and fitting into the players, because the way our game gets shaped, it gets shaped around the 2 or 3 best players. And most everybody was that in high school or prep school. But some of these prep schools are throwing 8, 9, 10 high major players together. They got to learn role definition real quick. And now they've adjusted, they've went there, they've learned role definition. Now when they come to college, some of those guys, that's really helped them. Because that's what it comes, college is no different than the pros. Like, you got to have role definition, and we're not assigning role definition we're waiting to see like who's our guys, like who's the guys that are going to step to the forefront here. And now we're going to be able to put some pieces together and then get to our role definition with that. But you got to be on earning ground there. That can't be something in recruiting that's promised to you, because when you're in a good program, the reason you're in a good program, there's a lot of good players. And that's really important in college basketball with guys because that's their happiness and they want it right away. And sometimes it doesn't come right away. And now if they just move every time there's a problem, they're going to move a lot. There's an old saying in basketball, if you live and die on every shot, you're going to be dead. You're going to be dead a lot. Like you can't live in, like everything can't be, hey, if this doesn't work, I'm leaving. Hey, if this doesn't work, I'm leaving. And now the only thing you get good at it moving. You get guys that come in your program and they've been to 3 high schools and 4 AAU programs. What do you think after they don't start? What do you think's happening? They're leaving. So like trying to see why guys when they transfer, because you take a lot of guys that do go to 2 to 3 high schools. That's why. Like you got to figure out the why, and then you have to be honest with them and say like, here's going to be your competition, and here's the guys that you got to compete against. Make sure you understand. I've said the same thing to them. Zach Edey's a 2-time National Player of the Year. I didn't promise anything to him. Each one more played 10 years in the NBA. I didn't promise anything to him. And so like they came in and they earned it. They established themselves and they grew. And, that's the way it should be.
Coach, you're on the recruiting trail now, so I want to let you get out there and get after some more good players. But before we leave, I want to end on kind of maybe a little lighter note, ask a couple fast break questions here as we wrap up. Who is the funniest player you've ever coached?
Oh, man.
There are probably several.
There's a couple of them that are funny that aren't trying to be funny. Like I don't know if that's going to be our answer. I coached a guy at Southern Illinois, Brian Turner. He's fun. He's a high school coach now in St. Louis. He was fun. He was fun to be around, but he was fun. He was quick witted.
Yep.
Good comebacks. Yeah. I'll pick BT.
Okay. Best player you ever coached against? Again, probably several really good.
Steph Curry, probably.
Oh, okay.
He didn't play well in the game. Coach McKillop had the Eastern Conference. They scheduled a bunch of good teams in a row. We were very fortunate to get them on the back end of that. They went on like a 5-game where they played, some of the best teams in college basketball, and they traveled a lot. And we got him at the end, and he just didn't have his legs there. But yeah, just off the top of my head, I would say him.
Toughest Big Ten road environment.
For us, Indiana. Yeah, I've always enjoyed that challenge. Their fans get up for that game just like ours do when they come here. But yeah, it's always allowed just a great environment. Like I love competing there and playing there. I always talk about that when another school came after me a while back. And that just stuck in my head. I was like, man, I can never coach Purdue and go back into that environment. Like in this year, like we put ourselves in a great position, up 10 or 12 and a half, and they just thrashed us in the second half. Their fans got behind them, and just, you don't have enough timeouts. But no, I've always enjoyed that competition in that environment.
Any student section that rivals the paint crew?
I don't think so. We do a good job of separating it, so it's on both ends. They're on top of stuff, man. They're there, and I always tell our guys, like, you got to give them something to cheer about. Mm-hmm. Like, give them something to cheer about. Like they're worth about 6 to 8 points when we play well, and but you got to play well.
This is put you on the spot here. Maybe best Indiana high school gym.
Muncie Fieldhouse.
Okay.
I'll go there. Yeah. It's one of the tops in the country, and a lot of good players have come through there.
Okay. 2 more. Favorite thing about living in West Lafayette?
Just how accessible it is to get to work and get to where you want to be. Like they have good pizza too.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. But I love that part of it. Yeah. I travel a lot. And so you get, whether you're driving through Houston or driving through Atlanta or like Boston or DC, I'm just talking about the places I've been here in the last week. Like from getting to A to B, sometimes it's going to take some time. Like in West Lafayette, it's great. You can get from A to B, get to work, get to wherever you need to be. And it's pretty easy. Like I love that about it.
Okay, final question, important question. Which is more pressure, coaching at Purdue or throwing out the first pitch at Wrigley?
Oh, coach at Purdue, no doubt about it. I love baseball. I love the Cubs, but I'm not a good baseball player. So if I fail, it's like you can just fall back on.
No big.
This isn't my sport, and so I just like it. But I'm really in awe of it. Like I went to about 25 games this year.
Did you really? 25? Wow.
Yeah, and I'm in awe of those guys, man. It's how people don't realize how hard what people do that play it, how hard the sport is, and how unpredictable the sport can be at times.
Yeah,
like it's just and how one person, you can have one team a lot better than the other team, but they're still pros, right? It's like what you see in an NBA game. Like it's almost a kiss of death when you get up 20, and you're like the other team, like this the human behavior, law of averages, whatever you want to look at, it always seems like that other team gets back into the game. Not always, but, Well,
Matt, you've been very gracious with your time today, hopping out of a busy recruiting schedule. And you have official practice starting here in about a week or so. So lots going on and lots of anticipation about the program and the season ahead. Really appreciate the time, Coach, and best of luck to you this season and beyond.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. We're a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes, nearing 250 now, and Indiana Business News 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Off the Record with Indiana's 250 most influential business and community leaders is a podcast that peels back the curtain on Indiana's most respected leaders, one episode at a time. Go beyond the headlines and hear the stories of grit and innovation that shape these leaders. Do you want to know who's driving our state forward? This is a must listen. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts or at ibjpodcast.com.
Your commute just got smarter. Turn drive time into growth time. The IBJ Media Podcast Network gives you front row access to leaders shaping Indiana's economy, culture, and future. No filler, just smart, relevant, local storytelling you won't get anywhere else. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcasts.com.